James Farr here, live from Pasadena Media Studios. Get ready for more piercing and provocative. The Conversation Live starts now. And welcome to another episode of The Conversation Live. The Conversation Live focuses on social justice, restorative justice, inclusion, and equality. Coming up today on The Conversation Live, we're going to have a critical and uncomfortable conversation. We're going to talk about mass incarceration. We want to revisit President Donald Trump signing in the First Step Act. Also, we want to meet a young man who won the NAACP AXO Award in Detroit this year at their national convention. And people have asked a little bit more about my backstory. We'll share a little bit more with you from my interview on Arroyo Profiles, and stick around to find out who this week's white moment is.
As long as there has been freedom for black people post-slavery, there has been a criminal justice system that has been committed to caging them again.
The criminal justice system has definitely affected men of color since the beginning. You know, it's like we never really had a fair shot. And you see that with what's going on with Meek Mill's case.
It's been over 10 years that he's been fighting the same case. A ridiculous parole system, and a judge who seems committed to locking him up rather than allowing him to produce and be great in the world as he's been trying to do. Meek Mill is a representation of a deeper problem in our criminal justice system. From the convict lease system to even slave catchers before the emancipation, there's always been a system designed to watch black bodies, to catch black bodies, to exploit black bodies by incarcerating black bodies.
Racism still exists to this day. It's 2018, and it's still dominant everywhere. I see it every day.
Black men are a threat to society in the minds of others. I was one of the lucky ones, but unfortunately my brother wasn't. Meek Mill wasn't.
People are innocent that are locked up right now, and they need to be freed. It's time for change.
What we're trying to do is not fix the system, but instead break the system and rebuild and reimagine a new system that is fair and just and whole. We can vote, we can advocate, and we can engage in our everyday lives in ways that enforce the idea that we can restore people and make them whole rather than punish people. Instead of asking who did it and how do we punish them, we can ask who was harmed and how do we make them whole again.
I just got up here to thank y'all for coming out to support me and supporting the other men and brothers that's pulled up in the system the same way. So I want to say thank y'all, and I appreciate everything.
And welcome back. As I said, today I am extremely excited. I have very intelligent, very smart young man. He's a local kid, and I don't mean that in a condescending way, but I'm showing my age at this point. As I mentioned, joining me in the seat today is Jordan Patton. Jordan recently went to Detroit to the NAACP National Convention, where he competed in the AXO competition. And Jordan was actually awarded the silver medal. So that was second in the nation. And so I wanted to invite Jordan in. His essay was about mass incarceration, and we can't show a great deal of the essay, but we certainly can talk to Jordan about it. So Jordan, thanks so much for joining me in the seat today. How you doing today?
Pretty good. Thank you for having me on the show.
Cool, man. So Jordan is 16.
Yes.
A senior, and has such a bright future ahead of him. And before I unpack and talk a little bit about the essay that he wrote and his experience at the NAACP convention in Detroit this past year, one of the things I shared with you, Jordan, before we got in here is I wanted to compliment you because you have displayed something that may be lost on your generation. You know what I mean? When my first made contact with you, it's been about several weeks, but you followed up. You emailed me, you text messaged me, and you telephoned me. And it was the telephone conversation that I was most impressed with, because we tend to think that your generation doesn't necessarily pick up the phone and talk to people, man. So I just want to, you to keep that in perspective and keep that skill set with you as you're going forward. So why tackle mass incarceration? What was it about it that made you want to sit down and write an 11, 12-page essay?
Well, primarily, I had written this essay at a UCLA summer program called VIPS, and we were tasked to choose a topic that we felt was like important to us, that we can do like a lot of research on. So like mass incarceration was that topic that I felt like not a lot of people were talking about it, but not that many people like my age were really diving into it. So throughout the 2 weeks I was there, I was able to like find out research and do like a bunch of different like diving into sources and stuff like that. And I was able to really like come up with a solid essay, and that actually like touches home to people that look like me, because a lot of people are being incarcerated for crimes they either did not commit or crimes that were not as serious to their in juxtaposition to their sentencing. So it's very important that I was able to touch on this topic, especially considering the amount of people my age that were also getting like arrested and put into these systems.
What was one of the things that you kind of, and I know, like I said, it was a long, extensive amount of research, very well done, but what was that one thing that stood out to you?
The one thing that really like stood out, in my opinion, would probably be the exonerations. Because it's one thing to go to jail for a crime that you did commit. It's another thing to go to jail for a crime you didn't commit, and a crime that you had no part in playing, and just racial bias had been taken over instead of actual facts and evidence to actually prove that you're innocent. And it's just like the amount of exonerations it shouldn't be the amount that it is. These people should be having to like live their lives and like be like normal citizens of this country, but no, they have to go through this entire like criminal justice system process just because of a crime they did not commit. And the amount of statistics I found with like witness tampering and then like falsification of evidence and all these different like types of methods in which exonerations could be like magnified is just alarming, and it's something that I believe that we need to prevent like as a whole, because like that number should not be the way it is.
Let me check in real quick. You're watching The Conversation Live. The Conversation Live focuses on social justice, restorative justice, inclusion, and equality. My guest today is Jordan Patton. Jordan is a senior at a local high school here in Pasadena. He is a scholar. He was the recipient of the NAACP AXO Award, Silver Award medalist. Jordan, I talked to you a little bit earlier about the First Step Act. I mean, because you did some research about mass incarceration. This was the president's attempt to kind of right that wrong in a bipartisan way. Jared, let's take a look at this next clip, and then we'll catch up with Jordan on the
one of the biggest reforms in decades, has just passed the Senate.
In my opinion, too, it's called the First Step Act. It's a sweeping bipartisan bill that overhauls parts of the federal criminal justice system. Supporters say it'll make the system fairer, it'll reduce prison overcrowding, and it'll save taxpayer money. Let's talk about what it does specifically. It takes several steps to ease mandatory minimum sentences for nonviolent drug offenders. It reduces the 3-strike penalty from life behind bars to 25 years. It helps inmates earn reduced sentences for good behavior, and it provides programs to help reduce recidivism, or a repeat of the crimes that got prisoners into prison in the first place. But the bill only affects federal prisons. This is important. There are nearly 81,000 inmates right now. That is less than 10% of America's prison population. That's why this is just a first step. It now goes to the House, where it's expected to pass, then to the president, who signaled that he'll sign it into law.
And welcome back, Jordan. I mean, it's a lot. This is at the federal level. This certainly doesn't affect, those that are incarcerated at the state level. So I kind of want to talk a little bit more about you real quickly. We're getting a little short on time. As a senior, what does the future look like for you?
Pretty promising, actually. I'm currently enrolled in 6 AP classes, and it's a lot of rigorous coursework. One of the classes I'm taking is AP Research, where basically the entire course of the year you have to write a 4,000 to 5,000 word paper and of a particular topic. And I decided to choose my topic on the militarization of police department in Pasadena. So basically, over the course of the year, I will be diving into like different sources, interviewing police officers possibly, and like gaining a bunch of insight from other studies communities to see how this militarization has affected primarily minority communities. And yeah, I think in the future, I want to pursue like a degree in art and design, which is kind of like a digression over the whole.
I don't think it's a digression, but go ahead. You
could
use that art and design. Go ahead.
Exactly. So like basically, my idea is to use this art and design major to create content, primarily like TV shows, comic books, or movies that basically emulate these like beliefs and values that I hold close to myself, including inclusion, diversity, equity, all these different values, and be able to like film, like display that to like different demographics and audiences, and basically touch on issues that are really prevalent, including discrimination and political corruption. So that's
Jordan Patton's been my guest today. Jordan, thanks so much for taking time. So a lot of you have asked, what's the backstory behind the Conversation Live? And so last week I had the opportunity of being a guest on the Arroyo Profiles show. And rather than me tell my story, Kevin Bruce invited me on and we unpacked what is the backstory of Conversation Live. So let's take a look at it and we'll see you back on the other side of it.
Welcome to Arroyo Profiles. Our first guest has pointed out and spoken out on many community issues. So here to help issue some societal doggy bags, I give you James Farr.
Hey, what's up, Kevin? How you doing?
All right. So first, describe your show so people can know what I'm referring to.
First of all, Kevin, thanks so much for having me on Arroyo Profiles. Yeah, the Conversation Live focuses on social justice, restorative justice, inclusion, and equality. And what we do is take deep dives and unpack some very serious issues from a hyper-local lens that affect many of us right here in the city of Pasadena.
Exactly. So that's exactly what I was talking about. You've tapped on, you touch on a lot of subjects that pretty much are kind of taboo. From a society point of view, you go in and you attack, and that's great. That's something that we need to do. So tell me a little bit more about your past history and how you got into doing what you're doing.
Well, currently I produce the Conversation Live right here in Pasadena Media Studios, but prior to that, I've done over 150, probably about 175 of these conversations with various different people, from elected officials to artists to business leaders to members of the ACLU. I mean, it kind of ran the gamut over a time of about 2 years. And the reason why I started Conversation Live is because I felt that I had this incredible access to people. And what I normally would have been doing in a coffee shop, I thought I'd kind of open it up and allow people to come inside. So what you see on the show is nothing any different than what you would see maybe over at Perry's joint, just sitting there on a bench, talking with someone in the community, talking with our police chief or our mayor or council members. I said, let's just bring it into a show, if you will, and share it with people in the community.
That's beautiful. We'll talk a little bit more about your history, but let's go to the sizzle reel of your show. We'll check it out.
You're watching The Conversation Live. I'm your host, James Farr. The Conversation Live focuses on social justice, restorative justice, inclusion, and equality.
There's been no shift in government plan of exactly how we're going to be increasing government and more houses being built. So it's a much broader issue, in my opinion, than just the issue of rent control.
If only left to the market's okay with homelessness. It's called an externality. There are lots of things going on for a landowner to make a high profit and cause chaos all around.
There's still violence. There's still, people losing their lives, and that hurts to see, especially when you start seeing brothers that you knew, grew up with, passing away. And not only that, you start seeing the younger generation who, you had a hand in as far as mentoring them, and then to see that they're dead in the street, that starts to hurt and affect you, and you want to do something about it.
There's a cosmic collision, catastrophic collision that takes place based on timing. And sometimes that catastrophic collision based on timing will often give birth to a new concept of life. Maybe we can get some dialogue. But for someone to just dictate the rules of engagement when it comes to trying to get intellectual results from such a complex issue, I find it quite preposterous.
One thing I can tell you, with the hundreds of overdoses that I saw that are opioid based, I never saw one overdosed from cannabis. Never one. If anything, I saw people mellowed out. I saw them hungry, but I never saw an overdose.
Your cannabis shop, your dispensary, Collective, Golden State, was raided by Pasadena Police Department. How did that impact you, your employees, when a SWAT team comes in with armed?
Well, we were encouraged, I felt, by the city, and I feel really disappointed that a civil land use disagreement turned into a potential criminal matter.
Like Mama would say, time and place for everything.
That's
right?
exactly
But
right.
My issue is, how is it that the school all of a sudden becomes the wrong place? Like,
So
how
what
does that
what does
impact?
education prepare you for?
Well, one opinion is it prepares you to work in an industrial system and to follow rules and to be systematically programmed in how to proceed. That's what some would say.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is, as a 17-year-old senior said to
But let's
me,
go back.
how does me wearing a do-rag not make me excellent?
We help all kind of black people. It doesn't matter if you are a college student or a business owner or if you were a gang member. It doesn't matter. Like, if your life matters under the Black Lives Matter brand.
A lot of hot button topics.
Yeah.
So how'd you get into this niche of getting into the community and exposing some of these topics?
What I would call that is my awakening date goes back to around July 2016, and I talk about this in an upcoming book, Walking While Black. It was around that time that there were 3 deaths caused at the hands of police, and they were just on a constant viral loop. And while on vacation in Denver with my wife, I ended up joining a demonstration. And it wasn't that I wasn't conscious or wasn't aware of it or these things didn't matter to me prior to that. It was just something at that moment came on me and I felt that I wanted to be involved. I didn't necessarily know how, and so I started to organize. And I started to organize at Perry's Joint with something called Speak Out. And it was with no agenda other than gathering community together. And let's find out what are some common grounds and what solutions that we find. And in doing that organizing, I made some mistakes. I didn't exactly know what I was doing, but I think what people saw was that I had a commitment to really trying to bring people through the meeting and gathering of people and dialogue. Because I feel like if war starts with a conversation, so shall peace. So we gotta be able to sit down and talk. And sometimes things are gonna be uncomfortable.
Yeah, we've encountered quite a few uncomfortable situations
Absolutely.
here in the city. What was I saying about your issues? Do you basically find the issues, or they find you? How do you come about them?
It's a hybrid of the two. I mean, there's some, with social justice, restorative justice, inclusion, and equality being the pillars or the tent poles, if you will, around the show. Unfortunately, there's no stretch to find content that would fit within one of those tent poles. But people will inbox me things. Some things I come across. Sometimes I wish people wouldn't send me stuff because I can only watch so many police videos, you know what I mean? And like I gotta turn it off, but I really try to focus hyper locally on issues here in the city.
So what has been your top issue that you've had on your show so far? And let me know if you're still fighting that fight.
Well, I think collectively as a community, collectively as a city, there are 3 areas that I've given a lot of attention to. One is police use of force, policies. We've done some pretty deep dives. I mean, I've had former Chief Sanchez and current Chief Perez on here. I've sat down with retired Lieutenant Falante Riddle, also Sergeant Thompson. So I've talked a lot about trying to better understand their culture. And then the second issue would be the affordable housing crisis here in the city. The rent control or the lack of rent control and just cause evictions. And then cannabis has been something that's been at the top of a lot of people's concerns. So we've given a great amount of attention to these areas and hopefully looking to unpack and provide a space where people can just talk. And expand the coverage out maybe a little bit further than some of the other media outlets here in the area are able to do.
I totally understand that. We'll speak more on that right after this break.
What I do is effective or not, but what I can say is that my aim is to affect change. And so I am just one person in one space that has agency. There are a lot of people out there beyond me that are actually doing groundwork. And so these organizations are the ones that are really pounding the pavement. Sometimes I'm just a voice to amplify an issue, but I am optimistic. I will say that, you know, in some of my conversations with city council members, that some have expressed that they're interested in at least having a discussion around rent control. I know our current police chief, Chief Perez, has done some things that I have not seen in policing, in the sense of making his officers available to come sit and have some of these critical, uncomfortable conversations. So, you know, it's a long game. You know, we've been in these situations far longer, and I think it would be a little foolish to kind of expect them to immediately be over, but I'm optimistic.
But effect is happening. Things are trickling, and things are, as a result of exposing these things and bringing them to light, things are starting to kind of move in the direction, like you said, at least in.
Well, they certainly know someone's going to call them out on it.
Yeah, exactly. Call them out and let them know they got poop on their shoes. So, circling back around, so how has Pasadena media been influential in your goals and pursuit of with Conversation Live? I
mean, to have a resource like this right here, you know, within my city, a few blocks away from the train station, you know, or just short commute, it's just, I'm so appreciative, you know what I mean? Because here I can try out some new things. It's a long ways from doing a live stream, how I started in my native form, out of my man cave. So to be able to come into a studio, work with a team of professionals, get the criticism, learn best practices, has been really, I see a great deal of growth for me, but I really just like doing what it is I'm doing. So I'm happy, you know, someone said, hey, you know, maybe one day you'll end up somewhere else. I said, right now I'm happy right here, because what I want to do is provide a voice and through the lens of from a local narrative of what's happening right here in this city.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So basically, where to from here, basically?
More piercing and provocative, critical and uncomfortable conversation. Eventually I will be spinning off a podcast where I really can do some more deeper diving into some local issues. There's just only so much we can do in 27 minutes and 30 seconds. And there's so much more happening. And I think, you know, some people's thing or concern may be housing, it may be police, but there are a myriad of things that are happening in this city that a lot of our press and media just can't give the attention to. And I mean, for me, the Space Bank development over in the east side, that's a real situation. So we want to be able to continue these conversations, continue to inform people, and also invite them to come be a part of this, the Conversation Live.
That's great. Are there any other messages that you want to put out there, or maybe invite community to come in and express? Is there anybody on the forefront?
Absolutely. I mean, I get story ideas all the time. I can't think of, out of the nearly 200 interviews I've done over the last year or so, to a couple of years, at the furthest, it's been 1 degree of separation. But for the most part, most of my guests are people that I have an existing relationship with. And so I'm always looking to know new people and learn their stories and how we can unpack their stories and really dig into the issue. So, you know, reach out to me on Facebook, conversation.live, inbox me or send me a message, and I'd love to talk with you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you very much.
And welcome back. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot back there in my backstory. I have a lot more to share with you. We're just about hard up on the time today. As I told you in the top of the hour, I want you to find out who's this week's white moment. Roll it in, Jared.
And in Volusia County, the sheriff's office released body cam video of deputies arresting a 15-year-old high school student. The boy allegedly posted a mass shooting threat on a video game chat platform, vowing to kill 7 people at minimum. The teen admitted to making the comments, but said he was just joking. His mother insisted her son is not capable of committing mass murder.
He's still a little boy, and he's not one of the crazy people out there doing stuff. I mean, he's not that person.
Do you own a gun?
I have a gun, yes.
Okay, so he has hands and feet. He can grab your gun and go do something.
He would never do anything like that anyway.
We don't know. We don't know.
No, but I know. And I know.
The comment was initially reported to the FBI, and the FBI contacted the Volusia County Sheriff's Office. According to the Tampa Bay Times, at least 5 Floridians have been arrested in connection with mass shooting threats in the 2 weeks since El Paso and Dayton.
All right, folks, we're almost out of time. As I said, I want to thank my very special guest today, Jordan Patton, a senior at Marshall High School, NAACP AXO Silver Award winner. This young man has a bright future. Until we have another opportunity to speak with you, as always, Agape.
The Conversation Live is brought to you by